Cognitive neuroscience and the lobes of the brain. Cognitive neuroscience. The relationship between cognition and brain functioning has been a topic for at least 2000 years. Due to the development of sophisticated microscopes, we now know that the brain is made up of individual nerve cells or neurons. Neuron is the fundamental unit of information processing in the brain. So here is the structure of a neuron. Neuron-to-neuron communication is primarily achieved by the release of chemicals called neurotransmitters into the junction of synapse between the neurons. How these neurons work together to produce complex cognition. First of all, although neurons are indeed relatively simple, there is an enormous number of them. One way to remember this concept is via the phrase, neurons that fire together, wire together. It is estimated that an average brain contains close to 100 billion neurons, with each one having connections with up to 15,000 other neurons. Such large numbers enable complex cognition by allowing the brain to achieve a wide range of activities. Secondly, neurons' ability to be modified by experience, a topic known as neural plasticity. Thus, when one or more neurons consistently cause another neuron to fire, the connection between them becomes strengthened, and it is one of the primary neural mechanisms underlying the creation of memories. Another question in the history of neuroscience is whether mental functions are localized to specific regions or are more widely distributed throughout the brain. In the early 1880s, Franz Joseph Gall proposed that higher mental functions are associated with specific areas of the brain, and the size of the brain area devoted to particular abilities could be measured by the pattern of lumps and ridges on the individual's skull. This approach was known as the phrenology. Modern research on brains suggests that both the localized and distributed perspectives are correct. The localized perspective is correct in the sense that specific parts of the brain are indeed specialized for performing specific cognitive functions. However, the distribution perspective is correct in the sense that same cognitive functions like memory are so widely distributed that they may be considered a characteristics of the entire brain. We have learned more about the relation between the cognition and brain in the last 2 decades than we learned in the past. It is because of the techniques like lesion method and brain imaging method. In the lesion method, the effect of brain damage, either that occurred naturally in the humans as a result of a car accident or gunshot wounds or unavailable brain surgery observed. For example, damage to an area of the brain known as the hippocampus has been consistently shown to produce a very specific memory defect known as anterograde amnesia. On the basis of such results, it is now widely agreed that the structure hippocampus plays a fundamental role in memory. Although lesion studies continue to be a successful source of evidence, the brain imaging methods like Position Emission Tomography (PET) and functional magnetic resonance imaging fMRI have become indispensable techniques in cognitive neuroscience. They allow scientists to measure the function or activity of the brain that underlie cognitive performance. How do these techniques work? To function properly, neurons require glucose and oxygen, which are supplied by the blood. Increased neural activity as a function of cognitive activity deplete the level of glucose and oxygen faster than normal, resulting in a temporary increase of blood flow to the active area. PET and fMRI allow this increased blood flow to be measured, thereby providing a three-dimensional image or map of the brain activity underlying performance of a particular task. Thus, both PET and fMRI scans can be done while people perform different cognitive tasks, such as remembering a past event. The brain is divided into two halves: left cerebral hemisphere and the right cerebral hemisphere. Most neuroanatomy divides each hemisphere into four major parts or lobes: the occipital lobe at the posterior of the brain, the temporal directly under the temples, the parietal at the superior posterior part of the brain, the frontal at the front part of the brain right behind the forehead. So here is the image of the lobes of the brain. There are two hemispheres and four lobes. We can see the frontal lobe, temporal and occipital, and the parietal lobe also. The occipital lobe processes only visual input, both from the eyes and from memory. The right occipital lobe receives from the left side of space. In fact, the occipital lobes contain numerous different areas, each of which plays a key role in different aspects of vision. For example, some areas primarily process motion, others color, and other shape. If the occipital lobes are damaged, partial or complete blindness results. The temporal lobes are involved in many different sort of functions. One of them is the retention of memory. In addition, they receive input from occipital lobes and match visual input to visual memories. The auditory cortex of temporal lobe processes input from the ears, and the posterior portion of the left temporal lobe contains Wernick's area, which is crucial for understanding language. The parietal lobes are crucially involved in representing space and your relationship to it. The anterior part of the parietal lobes, the somatosensory cortex, represents sensations on different parts of the body. The parietal lobes also are important for consciousness and attention. Moreover, they are also involved in mathematical thinking. After the death of the famous scientist Albert Einstein, researchers discovered that his parietal lobes were about 15% larger than normal. The frontal lobes are generally involved in managing sequences of behavior or mental activities, that means cognition. They play a major role in producing speech. Broca's area is usually found in the left hemisphere. Several other areas in the frontal lobes are involved in controlling movements. Personality is localized in the orbit frontal area of the frontal lobe. And that's all for today. And if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. And thanks a lot for watching this video. Thank you so much.